Hello and welcome to Die Rolling. This is our thoughts on the D&D Stranger Things pack, and also our thoughts on the Roll20.net application itself. After playing a very extensive campaign with friends of the channel and ourselves, we feel like we've got enough now to do like a proper review on it and give you our feedback and our thoughts. So Adam,
we'll start with me. So are we going to cover the Stranger Things starter set first? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So from my perspective, the Stranger Things starter set theme wise, it's a massive thumbs down because I was expecting it to be Stranger Things, not Dungeons and Dragons, with a very loose Stranger Things thing tacked on. And I get as a business why you would do that, because lots of people like Stranger Things and there's Dungeons and Dragons in there, like in a couple of scenes. But yeah, for me, the theme, like, it kind of missed the point for me. However, I think the starter pack was pretty good because Jamie, it gave you everything you needed to run everything on there. It was all pretty accessible. Obviously, it's hard for me to really be able to tell you exactly what you get out of this because I was a player and this is opposed to a DM. Jamie's probably going to be able to do a lot better than I can because he's got the physical copy and also the digital copy. But yeah, as a player, like I say, the theme was a bit frustrating, but I really enjoyed playing Dungeons and Dragons on Roll20. So you had everything in that. They gave you everything in that starter set. And I think if there were any rule queries, then Jamie had easy access to that. So it felt like it was quite fluid once we figured out the advantage stuff.
No, I definitely agree with Adam on it, in the fact that the element of Stranger Things was there vaguely, but on premise, it's effectively just the introduction to D&D. So again, it's as it is. It's like bringing people that were fans of the television series a way of trying to introduce them as a way of the perspective of them playing D&D and say, oh, what's that little game they're playing within within Stranger Things? It's and introducing them to the mechanics and
here's the
aspects
thing
of it.
For me, Will and Adam, like, I just felt like it didn't bring it together. It felt like it almost would have been better if you were playing, if the characters were rolled as the characters that they would play in the series. I was going to say the film, but it's not. And you were playing that adventure, or you were playing an adventure, or you were fully immersed in like that D&D set for you say but
what they could have done with this is because obviously, Jamie, you've not seen Stranger Things, so you're on a back foot here, really. But with Stranger Things, you've got like this parallel world. They did have that in this starter set, but what you could have done is just have like, oh, you are some adventurers, and like you somehow stumbled into the upside down, or
it could have been like that Sir Tristan. It could have been a twist or something, that he was the one trying to cause the Tesla Hydra or something to come across the other one, kind of like the actual series where they were like drilling at holes or setting it to try and get into the world.
and the thing for me is, like, when you're like reading the pack, there's a lot of information. I think if you bought the physical pack, it would make a bit more sense in terms of how it's laid out. And reading other reviews of it online, some people have done this adventure in about 2 to 3 hours. So I think it's like designed to be played really quickly. And actually, in the last one we did, actually what came to me is like it felt really empty as a scenario, because you just was like, there's no real description in it. So like I tried to play the last one based on what was in the pack rather than like me embellishing all of the detail. And I think you could tell the difference. I think as players, you could tell the difference. The ones where I'd come up with the scenario and put the detail in versus what came out of the pack.
Definitely.
And I think that's the danger of one of these starter packs, is that if you've come into it all brand new, never seeing it before, one, it's going to be like hugely daunting. Two, it's going to feel like really bland. It's going to be really bland. I can't help it. You'll come away from it just really disappointed.
Unless you've had someone that's played properly before in the format and understands the concept of how to take it to the table. That's sort of what it seems to be expected to some extent.
But I disagree with you there, Will, because I think that takes away from what it's supposed
Yeah,
to be.
yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying.
The question here: who is this aimed at? Because if this is aimed at someone, so let's say it's aimed at someone like me who's played role-playing games in the past, and like you, Jamie, someone who's played role-playing games in the past, haven't played in a while, and they want to kind of get back into it. Then the starter set is probably a good kind of thing because you already know most of the stuff in there, and got the skeleton of a kind of an adventure in there. But if this is like you say, Jamie, if this is your first ever D&D, and let's say, Will, there's no one else at the table who's ever played Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games before, then yeah, I think you're right there, Jamie. It could come away as quite shallow and a bit of a hollow experience, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the kit, and I think when you look at what you get, like the £15, £12, which is sort of what it costs.
So
like,
what is that? Is that how much it was on Roll20?
That's how much it was on Roll20. It was about 15 UK pounds. You did the conversion, I'd have to go and check. But to buy it, the full physical pack is about £25.
Okay.
So in all, it's like comparable to like a lower end board game, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What did you get in the? So what did you get in the two different versions? So what did you get in the digital one, and what did you get in the physical copy?
You got exactly the same thing. So you got so the digital version had it all broken down, and you got the additional like tokens and character sets. But in the physical version as well, you get the same maps, but you get little plastic characters instead of like little. So comparable, there are like slight differences between the two. One, you're effectively paying for the plastic toys, for a better word, by buying the physical copy. But I disagree that is worth £25. I genuinely think that what you end up with is an introduction, almost like a sampler pack, but you don't have enough. The whole point, surely, of a D&D game is that you've got enough to go off and then go and do your own adventure or go and manage your adventure. And what I found myself having to do is go and buy the Dungeon Masters pack for an extra like $70, $78, just so that I can fill in all the gaps. And I know that isn't necessarily in the spirit, but I was like, I don't want to play this as it's written because it's boring.
It's interesting you say that because I've got quite a few different starter sets for different role-playing games. Most of them by the same company, but they're all the same kind of things where you do have like not a paper thin, but you have quite a thin rule book in there which tells you the basics of how to play the game. It doesn't go into like too much detail about particular elements of it, and then they say, oh, refer back to the core rule book, which obviously would cost you £30 odd pounds or something. But yeah, I think these are all like kind of rules light, trying to get people at a kind of learning curve, an easy kind of learning curve. So there's not too much information in there. And I think that works for some role-playing games, but I don't necessarily think that does work for D&D because of how big D&D or DAD is, right? Because Dungeons & Dragons, there's like, I got the player's handbook here, and there's so much stuff in for every kind of class you got in there, your own particular stuff. And then you got all the monsters to think about from the monsters manual and all the actual physical rules. So yeah, like I'm not sure it necessarily works for Dungeons and Dragons, like a starter set for people who are returning to it maybe, or just starting out. I don't know.
So the thing that drew me onto this, and I feel like this is a compelling story, is I went to our local board game cafe, and they were selling this, and they had about 3 or 4 of the Stranger Things pack, and they had one of the proper Dungeons and Dragons starter pack. And there was a family who were trying to get recommendations of things to do. Now, bear in mind, we're in the pandemic, so no one wants to play board games with rubber gloves. It just feels completely bizarre. They were like, no, we'd rather just buy something. What have you got for about 25 quid? So when you start looking at board games as a comparable cost, that's board games are coming out about 50, 80 quid. And the guy was like, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this Dungeons and Dragons thing? And actually, they were there for a few hours getting through, and they seemed to be getting through an adventure. And they were they'd never played it before. And the guy was coming over and helping them out and giving them guidance a bit. So I think from that point of view, I think it kind of works. But you could see the confusion on their faces when you were getting into it, and like the guy was like, "Well, why? If you've got this, why do you need a manual?" And I was thinking, yeah, but once you played it once, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Bin? You're gonna play it again?
It's like an assist to if you wanted to use, if you wanted like a future, you could have the same setting, but as a thing in the future that you'd like want to create your own branch of it, you could use it as a baseline for that, but you wouldn't, as you say, you wouldn't be able to effectively use it unless obviously you had a different group of people that you wanted to introduce and you're playing with different groups. But yeah, if you're wanting it as a more mainstream and wanting thing, you'd probably go for the main starter set rather than like a branch one, right?
I think thinking about it though, like if I'd never played D&D before, and let's say, you know, D&D's a bit more of a kind of accepted cultural norm now, especially with the pandemic and stuff. It's much more, you know, if you would say, I'm going to play Dungeons & Dragons, you wouldn't get as many people rolling their eyes or kind of going, nerd. But you know, that's thanks to media these days. But let's say I just wanted to pick this up and go with it. Maybe a starter set would be the right idea for me, because rather than, you know, like if you didn't know anything about it, you'd be like, well, where do I start? Do I need to do I just need a DM manual, or do I need a player manual as well? Do I need all this monsters manual stuff? So I think as a starting out point, it probably is good for somebody. I mean, I've kind of completely going back on my point here, but it probably is if I was going in completely fresh, I probably would prefer to go for it. And do you know what? Actually, honestly, I've done this with the My Little Pony role-playing game, because I was like, I'll get my kids into role-playing and see what they like. I rather than buy the actual physical, like, you know, the main core book, I thought, let's get the starter set. And it was perfect because the kids really enjoyed it, had loads of cool components in, and then I got the core book and we, you know, played a couple of times.
And I don't think we'd be so anti it if we'd got the D&D starter set rather than the Stranger Things starter set. And I think that for me is the difference, because I think we went into it thinking it was going to be like a Stranger Things
focus,
yeah.
And it was so loose that it almost started you off on the wrong tangent. And I think I think I'm quite astute when it comes to looking at what it is I'm buying. So if I was sort of a little bit tricked by it, I think you would feel really upset if you bought it and was like, oh, it's not really Stranger Things at all.
One I would like to try out though, they did the same thing, a starter set, but with Rick and Morty. And I feel like that theme would work a lot better for Dungeons & Dragons because all the portals and stuff they go through. So I wonder how much better or the same that is as opposed to this.
Well, maybe that's one for Twitch, right? Just get together and just try and sort that out when you can.
Okay, so we've kind of spoke a lot about the starter set, and I'd just like to once again point out, Jamie, you did a fantastic job doing the DMing of that.
Definitely.
It's been a while since you've done any DMing, so like just taking this on board and having people you've never played with before. So, you know, we had our guests coming in and playing, and it's always, you never know what's going to be like when you have new people and you're a DM, and it's like, oh, how are they going to affect the rest of the group? But you did a stand-up job for us. Honestly, well done for that.
And one of the things I was really worried about was like playing with new people. Like for this channel, it's like it was a new thing for us to go out and just go talk to other people and getting them to come to us. Like you always go, are we a big enough channel? But I had an absolute, and there was no guest that I didn't enjoy playing with, and they all challenged me in their own different ways, and it was really great. And do you know what the really nice thing about it is, that being able to go and like look at I've been more like, oh yeah, I'll go have a look at those bits, and listening to podcasts and all those bits. Yeah, it's really good. So yeah, what a lovely community we live in. That's what I call
it's such an inclusive community. It's lovely. So we spoke about the starter set. So shall we talk brass tacks, roll20.net? So I'll kick this off because I'm talking. So Roll20 for me. So I've played as a player, and I've also done DMing on Roll20. And I find the DMing is, once you know what you're doing, it's actually quite a versatile and fun tool to use. You do have to source a lot of the stuff yourself. But yeah, I think it's great for DMing. As a player, also think it's great. have I got any problems with Roll20? Sometimes the connection goes, but that might just be me. And it does take a little bit of getting used to before you. There is a learning curve definitely involved.
Definitely a learning curve. I was going to mention that.
I come at a slightly different angle because obviously I pay. You do the freemium model, which there's nothing wrong with that. Sorry.
I said it's not. It's perfectly usable.
It's perfectly usable. And so I went in and I paid for the 1-up. So I paid for the dynamic lighting and all those bits and pieces, and the extra resources in those. I have a problem with it, and it's a really simple one. I don't think it's worth £6 a month for just the dynamic lighting. I don't think in the current what you get that's worth it, because the hassle of trying to take a map and put dynamic lighting into it is just not worth that hassle. So now that we've finished what we've done, I'm going to cancel my monthly subscription and just go back to paying nothing, because there's nothing there to keep me as an ad hoc player, keep me interested, keep me involved. And I agree with you, from a DM perspective, it is so easy to create adventures. You can go and Google a map and drag it on, and you can, if you bought the bits, you can drag all the bits and pieces on, and you've got an adventure.
Yeah,
I don't need to pay for that. I don't need to pay that amount of money. And I get that. That makes it really inclusive, because you pay for your manuals or your resources, your DM manuals and stuff. But I don't know. I find that bit of it a bizarre thing. I think when you're in the Netflix era, that you almost feel like you want more, like £6 a month or £7. It doesn't feel like a lot, but I can have hours of entertainment from Netflix, and that's what they're in the industry. So there you go. That's my mini rant over in terms of paying for it versus the freemium model. I don't know what your things are on it.
Obviously, I've not gone at all with any of the paid features, but they have a whole range of stuff as you go up the different levels. In fact, of but more in terms of if you're a developer or an actual creator of your own campaigns, in the fact that you can create your own tools and stuff to work with maps and things like that, but you only get that at the higher level. So that's more of what it's designed for, I think. For if you're a creator and you need the extra resources to make your maps, then they've got the supplements there that you can then put into a bundle and dish out your own campaign. But as pointing on what Adam was saying earlier, in terms of a new player coming in to use Roll20, we've seen guests have a few issues of understanding where things are, trying to get to grips with where stuff is. Sometimes the controls of navigating around the map can be a bit confusing. Moving icons from one screen to another screen is also quite annoying. In fact, you have to create a new icon and move it over, then transfer all the health and details over. That ends up becoming a bit of a pain. So there's little bits that could be quality of life things, or things that make it a bit easier for someone who new to come in and use. Maybe a more guided tutorial through it, or highlights on what bits are, or more of a streamlined approach on how it looks. But that's we can't do anything with that. But yeah, as a new player coming in, it can be quite daunting, because there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot to click on. There's a lot to try out, and you never know what it can do or where things go.
Yeah.
And then,
I think if you are doing the DM for this, great. I think you got a great point there, Will. I think if you're doing the DM for this, and you've got 3 other guys, or whoever's coming along to your thingy, at least one of you, probably the DM, should go through that whole tutorial they have part of that, so they can guide people into that. Because I think if you all went in there totally fresh face, it would be a nightmare. Yeah,
you'd be figuring stuff out, and you'd probably spend the first session just learning how to roll a dice, and how to open up character sheets, and how to interact and do rolls for your attacks and stuff. But
one feature that was really nice was the ability to pop something out of the main window and pop it into a side window, like a character sheet. And so that was a really interesting feature. But I agree with you. I absolutely agree. There is nothing more that I found it so frustrating when you were trying to put a map together and move between the layers, because it doesn't tell you which layer you're on, and there's no way to swap. If you're on a tool, you don't know which tool you've got selected. And it comes back to my point, really. If you're paying, you've got a big, there's a big community on Roll20 right now. And like, yes, a lot of people are doing the freemium model. But you also, people are in that model are still paying for like resources and books and character stuff. And the fact is like the interface, I personally don't think it's good enough. I'm going to say it. It's just so, it's really off-putting. And I think you could just make that experience so much better.
Yeah. Quite clunky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so I think we're all in agreement on there as well. Roll20 it's a kind of powerful tool. You need to know how to use it.
Definitely.
And the UX UI kind of experience there isn't the best. But once it's certainly, I will say, it's certainly better than Tabletopia. With physics, I tried to play Dice Hospital the other day, and that was a nightmare. But yeah, I think one last thing I'd like to ask is, so Jamie, you had that the $15 Stranger Things starter set. You also had a physical copy. Do you feel that you needed to spend $15 to have all that, or could you have done that yourself and not spent that? Was it much better to actually just get that on Roll20, or would you have rather spent the time? I have a follow-up reason I'm asking this, but yeah.
So I think for me, what that gave me was the inspiration to have a story, to have something like I certainly remember when I was DMing, I did a big Star Wars campaign. I knew where the start was and I knew where the end was. But sometimes trying to get that journey together was really difficult. I feel like what it was almost like a random journey generator. So it sort of filled in some of the gaps and then allowed me to bundle in the bits that I needed. In terms of owning the two, the physical copy I've actually given away to someone, a friend who's got a family and they're like struggling a little bit. So I said, "Here, have this. Here's some entertainment. Like now you've not got Netflix. Why don't you play this?" And so they love it. They think it's really fun. But they have done like role play. But they bizarrely they had the same criticism, because they were expecting like a Stranger Things pack. So, but between the two, I think I'm really comfortable. I'm quite happy. I think it was $15. I think it was $15 or £15 well spent. I really do. For that reason, would I do it again for another one? Probably not. Unless like I was guaranteed, like a Rick and Morty. It was a proper Rick and Morty themed adventure. But I'd be really upset if I bought it and then it was just like the similar thing on a variation.
Yeah. I'm asking that because I've obviously always gone about Alien, the role playing game. It's fantastic. But I got the Alien role playing game, the physical starter set, and then I set it all up on Roll20. I spent probably about 2 hours getting all set up on Roll20, like taking pictures of cards, scanning them in, doing loads of stuff, getting them all on there. And we also got a review copy of the set you can get from Roll20 itself. And honestly, it's not much in there. There's not much difference. Like I kind of feel that actually, some of the bits that I did look better than the stuff that's actually in the official one. But I think you probably get that with any kind of like Roll20 stuff you're running there.
But you're missing an important component, which is human time. What's your time worth and value? Right?
It's worth. I mean, you've seen what I do in my free time. It's worth it.
like for me at the moment, like I have very little. I have very little free time right now. But one of the things I really look forward to is playing role play with you guys on a Thursday. Like that's like such an exciting thing, and the fact I'm DMing it. If I didn't have all those resources available to me, I don't think I'd enjoy it as much. It would feel like a chore and a job because I'd be like, oh, I've got to think of it.
You've got to draw your map. You got to.
I always had that adventure, but I also think you raise a really good point. Like we played with your brother Chris, and Chris is a really fantastic DM, and playing games with him is great because he always thinks about his adventure and he invests a lot of time putting a lot of depth into those. And I think if I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, I think he'd really struggle with something like where you take it off the thing. I think immediately he'd want to vary away because
he's very much he can run like you buy an adventure, he would run that no problem, but he's more about the journey than the destination. Like very much just makes it fun.
And I think as a DM, if you're going to play that, you've almost got to be almost transactional in what you're doing. You know, what character A does A and character B does B, and that really works. But if you're about the story, you're about the journey. I think that's where these resource packs, so you just get them blatted to you, don't necessarily work. And I also agree with you because I've seen some of your alien stuff and the other bit. I agree with you. Actually, I think what you put together looks better, but you've had that time to do that because that's how you want it to work for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what I'll probably do when we run the alien role-playing thing, I'll probably just do a few tweaks in there for the visual improvements I think are needed. But yeah, okay. So I guess is there anything else you guys would like to say about Roll20 or D&D Stranger Things?
I just want to say, despite all the negatives, despite all the things that you can pick holes in and you can moan about and you can groan about, because that's the world we're living right now, is that like everything seems depressing. Is that one thing it has facilitated is bringing us together to play games, and they're not necessarily the games that we would have normally thought about, but it have facilitated that, and it has been like so much fun doing it. And so for that, you cannot criticize criticize it.
It's definitely been really, really fun just doing a session every Thursday, going through and just playing an adventure, even if it wasn't the theme we expected. It's just fun having a fun adventure and just all the things that happened along the way. It's just I felt that the social aspect that it gives you is probably the biggest part of role-playing games in the first place. So the fact it is still able to achieve that, even though it doesn't have the theme, is still a really big positive.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here that like we all really enjoyed doing these sessions. It was absolutely fantastic having some guests on as well, like meet some other members of the community and stuff. And I think was this fun? Yes, it was fun. Mm-hmm. Was it perfect? No, but I think more iterations of using Roll20 and, the more times you do that, the more comfortable you get with stuff from player and DM side. The Stranger Things theme fell a bit flat for everyone, I think, but overall, great fun. And the nice thing is, now you have that, Jamie, you could run that with anybody.
That's it. Yeah, I can play with it. My plan is to eventually play it with the kids and turn it into something super, super exciting.
Right, well, I think our Zoom meeting is coming to...
We've got a whole 9 minutes to ramble on if we really want.
So thanks for watching, guys, if you did watch this. If you haven't watched this, you won't hear me saying this. So if you've enjoyed this, then please follow us on our various social medias, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. There's a Twitter there somewhere as well, Jamie, but and there's also a Twitch as well. No TikTok, of course.
Oh.
T for Twitch, no TikTok.
Twitch, maybe some reels on Instagram. Maybe we'll try that. Yes. So I mean, there's nothing else to say apart from until next time, guys. Please stay safe and keep rolling.